Welcome to my video. This is my review of the 1997 game The Curse of Monkey Island. And yeah, this was a game I absolutely loved. This will be a review from memory, but I do remember this game very well. The video will be rated roughly what the game is, so there will be some... Let's go with teen or above content rated. And I will be spoiling the first two games, not this one. So just be aware, you know, if you haven't played the first two, please hold off on watching this video until you have. I really don't want to, spoil them for you, as it were. So I am going to try not to repeat myself. I did say some things about this game in my videos on the first two, but just something that is really important for this one. I did play this game long before. You know, I played this probably like a year after it came out, and played it several times over the years since. Last time was probably... I mean, it would have to be at least 7 years ago, because there was a while where I wasn't playing video games. Maybe 10 years ago. And I have not played the original versions of the first two, only... I forget if they're called Remaster or Special Edition, but yeah, you know, the ones that came much later, from like 2009, 2010, thereabouts. And I would definitely say that I do prefer this one. And just to be clear, that's not just nostalgia. It's not always the case. You know, when I played the first Red Alert game long before, well, a while before playing the game that came before, the original Command & Conquer, later renamed Tiberium Dawn. And there are certain aspects of Tiberium Dawn that I think they did a better job on. I think in certain ways the two factions are more even than in Red Alert 1. But before I proceed, I do want to underline, I do continue to love the first two. And, you know, some of what I'm about to say, I don't mean to sound uncharitable. Obviously, when you make multiple games over multiple years, you might, you know, as technology improves, you might be able to make certain improvements that it's not reasonable to judge the earlier ones for not having that. I'm not trying to judge the first two for, I believe that is all that I really want to lay out before getting into it. So, to be clear, I absolutely respect people who do like, you know, one or both of the first games better than this one. I understand there's some disagreement about which is better. And, you know, I personally think the third is better than the first two. If you disagree, that's perfectly fine. You know, the way I see it, everybody's wrong about something. I'm just kidding. I've thought long about how exactly to explain it, and what I've landed on is, I feel like the first two games were basically like if Monty Python made, you know, point and click. Well, I guess they did make at least one. They feel like they were more like Monty Python-esque. Whereas this one, it feels like, you know, Edgar Wright got to write and direct one. And with that, I mean to say that the first two are incredibly funny. There's some satire and yeah, you know, you laugh almost all the time. But once one of them is done, you know, you could play through the entirety of both multiple times. There's not going to be that much emotional, you know, emotional investment and emotional catharsis. Whereas here, we have a lot of the comedy, you know, still incredibly funny. You know, a lot of my favorite jokes are in this one, but you also do have this, yeah, emotional investment and arcs and such. You know, this is the first of the three where what Guybrush is after actually matters. Like, and I get, you know, yeah, just blanket before I get into more. I get that that's the joke. For a lot of what I'm about to say, I 100%, I'm not saying that they, like, didn't know better. You know, part of it is the cynicism of the 90s, which, you know, yeah, any of my fellow 90s kids, you'll remember. It was a very cynical decade, you know. And these games that were slightly more, you know, somewhat family friendly, it came out as just like cynicism and yeah, this kind of thing of not having that much emotional attachment. You know, there's a certain, we're slightly removed from, you know, you do a lot of really bad things in these games, and we're kind of just supposed to laugh. We're supposed to say, well, you know, he's the protagonist, and it is funny. You know, in the more adult-oriented, you know, first-person shooters and such, it came out as, you know, really going hard on trying to offend people, harder than the Monkey Island games do. But yeah, you know, in the first game, you're just trying to become a pirate, and some people tell you this is what you should do. You know, so you go and do those things. Like the fact that you meet and fall in love with Elaine, that wasn't some, you know, you weren't planning to do that. And I get, you know, there's a message in there about, you know, love will find you when you least expect it. But it's also the romance. There's not a huge amount of emotional investment. It is essentially a parody of, yeah, you know, it's playing with the trope of, you know, like the nice guy who ends up with the girl even though he's not very impressive kind of thing. And then the second game, it's literally just Guybrush's ego. He's not even trying to, you know, get back with Elaine, which in a certain way I do really respect that he seems to somewhat respect, you know, yeah, when he approaches her, like, yeah, there's emotion there, but he's kind of just trying to get the map piece, you know. But then in this one, it does actually, yeah, it's in part about their shared love, and also, you know, yeah, this is not really a spoiler because it happens extremely early in the game, and it's very difficult to discuss the plot of this game without getting into it. Basically, yeah, tell you what, if you don't already know, pause this video, watch the game's intro to get, you know, and then unpause and come back. Okay, I'm gonna assume if you're still watching, you already know, or, you know, yeah, when you're watching this, you should already know. But yeah, so basically, you know, yeah, I'm not going to restate everything. I'm going to analyze slightly on it. We get a reiteration of LeChuck's toxic masculinity. He refuses to take no for an answer. You know, Elaine, you know, there's some jokiness, but she's clearly saying no. She says no in like 5 different ways in the span of a minute. You know, she could not make it any clearer, and he's just like, "What do you mean? Would you stop with your riddles?" You know, like that's almost a direct quote. You know, and yeah, that is, there's so many young men out there who just will not take no for an answer if there's a woman they like, you know, and he keeps threatening and even committing acts of violence, and because it's somewhat cartoony, she doesn't get hurt, but it's not for lack of trying on his part. He's going to kill her to prove how much he cares, because if he cannot possess her living form, he will possess her in death. He will control her with force. And, Guybrush is a complete contrast to that. And yeah, she says, Guybrush is the only man I ever loved, and, he asks, did you really mean that? And she's like, I guess I did. And so he's proposing to Elaine. Unfortunately, the ring, the whopper of an engagement ring he got her is cursed. So she turns into a golden statue, and as, they're realizing this just before it happens. And she's, just about to sock him on the mouth, which I don't love the fact that, there's this thing about, women be violent, and the fact that also her becoming a statue, I'm not going to say how much of the game she remains a statue for, but, one of the first things you have to do in the game is try to deal with her, being a statue. She doesn't have a lot of agency. For that part of the game, she really has no agency. Not the biggest fan of that, but I do really appreciate that for once, Guybrush's screw-ups actually have consequences, and yeah, there's an emotional investment. It is 100% his fault. He didn't mean to do it, but it's his fault. If he hadn't given her the ring, she wouldn't be a golden statue. And he has to fix that. He's not just trying to impress other people by becoming a pirate, by getting the treasure of Big Whoop, these sorts of things. He actually, he wants to save the woman he loves, who loves him. Again, yeah, it's a trope, but we care, And the, let's see. So let's see. Yes. It makes a huge difference. You get way more invested because you really do want to see, I suppose some people maybe play it and are like, this is sappy, I don't want to, but if, yeah, if yeah, today you can just watch the intro here on YouTube, and yeah, if it appeals to you, you're gonna like the game. If not, yeah, it is fairly straightforward, trying to get emotional investment by having two characters care deeply about each other, and one of them needs the other, and the one that's needed is the protagonist, so you identify with the protagonist. Yeah, but yeah, it's, there's things in this game that are in the first two games, especially in the first game. There's a couple of things that return from, that were in the first game. They weren't in the second one. They were trying to do something slightly different. I wouldn't have minded if there was more difference between this and the first, but I do appreciate, listening to feedback is great. And yeah, this time there's emotional involvement. The insult sword fighting is back. In the first one, it was just, gotta impress these pirates that I know nothing about except they're serious looking, or whatever the phrase exactly was. And here, you're doing it because it's part of, making things right, undoing the curse that you accidentally inflict upon Elaine. Crap, what was the other thing? Insult sword fighting and the... Okay, maybe I'll remember later in recording the video, but yeah. This also has some, again, not saying that the first two could have, I get, limitations of technology, the fact that this one has fully animated cutscenes really does help a lot. And I'm not criticizing the original art style from the first two games. They definitely did the best they could, and it is impressive for the time. But here I'm more talking about like remaster special edition. I think this has the best art style of, compared to the remaster and special edition of the first two games. And originally this was the first one to have voice acting, and it does so much to get you into it. And yeah, just this was the first one where I felt like Guybrush actually ended up liking at least some of the people he interacted with, which, again, 90 cynicism, I get that was the point of the first two, but it does work really well, to get you to care, to get it to feel like something, like it's not a series of puzzles connected by an overall storyline. And yeah, this, what was the other thing? I swear there was some other, Yes, right. There's a couple of, like, I don't know if you want to call them mini games. That is probably the best way to put it. At the start, you get to fire a cannon from a ship at rowboats and such. And later, you get to sail a ship and fire cannons from that to board other ships as part of, that's what leads into the insult sword fighting. But yeah, the crap. I'm certain there was something else. This, I would argue, this has the best climax of the first three, which again, the ones for the first two are quite great. Basically, each of these climaxes have gotten better than the last, and even the first one had a quite good climax. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I kind of feel like this one has the most the LeChuck and Guybrush conflict feels hits the hardest, in my opinion. There was some personal stuff to it already, but I mean, in the first one, it really is just, Guybrush has just fallen for Elaine, and then she gets kidnapped by LeChuck. So it's not like you haven't spent a lot of time building a relationship with her before something bad happens, which, I acknowledge that by this point, it can build on the first two. But I do think that, one thing I would say, like, if the first game, if instead of, I want to become a pirate because that's just kind of what I feel like, maybe he sees a poster of Elaine, because you find a poster of her very early in the game. Maybe he sees that and he's like, I really want to impress her. I look at her face and, just, yeah, if even for just a few seconds, I gotta make her smile, make her laugh. I gotta show that, there's something. I gotta impress her in some way, which I acknowledge that's not entirely unproblematic either, but something like that. And so that, someone tells him, oh, Elaine, you gotta be a pirate. She only goes for pirates. And so he's doing it to become a pirate. Did I already say this in one of the earlier videos? Anyway, something like that. And then in the second one, you could have it be that he thinks if he gets Big Whoop, Elaine will want him back, that sort of thing, But yeah, in the first one, not that much emotional investment. And then the second one, there is somewhat of a conflict. I don't know, I guess I just didn't feel like LeChuck was that constant of a threat, which, yeah, just in this one, it felt more like the stuff that, yeah, again, part of it is that there's emotional investment. In the first two, yeah, there's puzzles you have to solve, there's challenges in your way. But this was the first time where those challenges felt like there would actually be consequences if I didn't solve them, Especially because at the end of, at the end of the first one, he gets together with Elaine, but then that's undone in the second one. And it also felt like, it's like, how did that happen? What does she see in him, He actually screwed up there at the end of the game, and he hasn't done very much. Again, parody of romance, I get it. Doesn't mean I can't criticize it. And the second one, yeah, it's just the yeah. In the second one, it's about his ego, and then this one, it actually is the yeah, he has to save Elaine, and the idea that you'll fail. It's not that all of the challenges are directly caused by LeChuck. In all three of these, a number of the challenges you face is just, pirate life. It was, treacherous. It was dangerous. But you actually do, yeah, you care because of this emotional investment. And just, yeah, also the fact, yeah, in the first one, you never actually care about fighting about the sword fighting. It's funny. It's definitely funny. I'm really glad they brought it back. I was a little surprised that it wasn't in the second after it was in the first. But you're literally just doing it to impress these people you don't even know, just because they look like impressive. Again, it's a great joke. There's so many things young men do to impress people that is like, why are you even trying to impress? You don't even know them. They don't care about you. There's things you could be doing that are much better. But yeah, in this one, you're insult fighting to proceed in the plot in a more sort of organic way, rather than just having been told this is what you're supposed to do. I think that might more or less. Yeah, I also just think some of the stuff where Guybrush is kind of failing at proving himself to be a pirate, I think this one has some of the best jokes involving that. In the opening, you use a thing or two that are thought of as pirate stuff, but the way you use them is perhaps not as impressive as Guybrush would like. And I wouldn't rule out, based on the second game, I wouldn't rule out that in one of the sequels to this one, he just tries to convince people that no, I was much smoother than that. I appreciate that Guybrush is still bragging about, I can hold my breath for 10 minutes, a reference to the first game where if you don't get out of the water within 10 minutes, you do drown. At about 10 minutes, you drown. So, and yeah, I think a lot of Wally's funniest stuff is in this one, though he is also very funny in the second one. Yeah, I think that. Right, I appreciate that. I wish we got her name, but the voodoo lady, I appreciate that she's still around, still being really helpful, still being really funny. I wish they didn't do the stereotyping. I think, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I had to say. Actually, yeah, I mentioned the climax. I think this also has the most compelling ending. I'm not going to give away whether it's happy or sad, and I do quite appreciate that by this point you weren't sure. You know, the first one has a happy ending, the second one has kind of a downer ending. Yeah, I was a little surprised that the downer ending. This one doesn't explain as much as I would maybe have liked about the. You know, at the start of this one, Guybrush is just free of the curse ending from the second game, and that, you know, as I was again having played this one before and remembering how it starts, when I played the second one, when the curse starts, when you turn into a child, you know, I was like, oh, I wonder how I'm gonna get out of this one. And then the credits start rolling shortly after, and I was like, how did they? But that's, you know, I mean, there's the circumstances of the ending of the first and the start of the second are also slightly different, but not quite to this extent. You know, I don't know that. Yeah, I haven't really been able to find an explanation. Maybe they wanted to jump directly into the new story. I don't know. I think that might more or less. Yeah, I did briefly want to talk about, you know, in the second game, I really loved some of the library jokes, the fact that Guybrush wrote, and if I recall, multiple times about his adventures in the first one, and like some, you know, whoever does the catalog in the library added, you know, oh, this is one of Guybrush's worst or something like that, you know, and yeah, if you look up recursion, it says look under recursion. So it's an infinite recursion. That's a quality joke. I quite like that. Yeah, I think I've said everything I had about this one, so I do just want to very briefly talk about why I love the ending of the second one so much. Now, I wasn't going to spoil that in my spoiler-free review of the second one, but yeah, there are spoilers in this one for the first two games. So the fact that, you know, over the course of the game, there are just a few things that are like, that's a bit modern for a pirate. You know, at one point, Guybrush says, what's this doing in a pirate game? You know, and yeah, you know, near the end, you know, you find Big Whoop, then you fall into the hole, and as soon as you land there, it's like, this does not look like something they had back then. You know, there's an elevator within walking distance, and it does, yeah, it looks like a janitorial sort of area, you know, yeah. And, you know, quality joke with the, instead of lost children, it's lost parents. That was quite good. And you, of course, have to grab the skull to proceed. But yeah. The you know, you make your own, you know, voodoo doll, again, problematic, and you know, you're able to, you know, at first it seems like, oh wow, I guess that's not the solution, which again, funny joke. And I do appreciate that the solution is, you know, in the first one it's like, well, I lost the thing I was supposed to do, I don't know, I guess I'll use, what was it, like root beer, grog or something like that, you know, that was, yeah, funny but slightly less impactful than something that's more logical. But yeah, you know, you tear off the leg, it gets torn off, the real LeChuck, and then you get some really great Star Wars references, you know, take off the mask. I want to, you know, just, and then you take it off, and he's the regular dude under there, you know, that's legitimately funny. And yeah, apparently LeChuck, you know, yeah, in the curse, you know, not reality, but in the curse, he said, you know, oh, no, I really am your brother, you know, weird brother Chucky. And, you know, he's upset that Guybrush broke his toy. Okay, it wasn't a toy, it was a junior, you know, the whole thing, yeah. And then a janitor walks in and he's like, you kids aren't supposed to be in here. And then when you walk out, both of you are children. And, you know, you see your parents, who you saw earlier, And you can say to them, I'm Guybrush Threepwood, a mighty pirate, and, you know, they'll be like, that's nice, dear. That's so perfect, because in the first two games, so many times you can introduce yourself by saying, I'm Guybrush Threepwood, a mighty pirate. So that's, you know, in the curse, that's basically like, you know, yeah, he is playing, you know, and you pass the steam and weenie hut, and, you know, all this stuff. Yeah, you know, the idea that, you know, of recontextualizing the entire second game. And I really, you know, we're not supposed to take it literally, because you see LeChuck's eyes glow red in a very cool effect right before the end credits roll. You know, but no, the idea of recontextualizing the entire second game, and possibly the first, yeah, I guess that would almost have to also be the first, as just Guybrush play acting in a pirate themed carnival, you know, that's really funny. That is such a, just, yeah. And yeah, you know, the Steam and Weenie Hut, that's where you start the second game. And let's see, I think, yeah, and the thing about, you know, oh, you know, LeChuck's been, you know, hunting you. Yeah, you know, the parents sent him to find you, and that's what's been going on. And then because Guybrush is a child with an overactive imagination, he imagines, oh, evil zombie pirate trying to kill me. Oh no, you know, that's legitimately a very funny way to yeah, you know, they didn't have to go that hard. I appreciate they did. You know, once they decided, let's do a downer ending this time. Let's not make a happy ending, because you could easily see how it could have been. Like, basically, if it just ended with you, maybe, yeah, you know, let's say you do destroy LeChuck's body, because you know, it's specified that's what needs to be done this time. The first one, you banished his spirit, but if they can resurrect his body, you know, that's so yeah, you know, you destroy LeChuck's body. Love that a dog goes and picks up the leg after it gets torn off as well. But yeah, you know, you destroy LeChuck's body, reunite with Elaine. Maybe Big Whoop is real, maybe it isn't. You know, maybe the you could have a thing about, you know, Elaine could say, you know, it's too bad the treasure of Big Whoop wasn't real. And Guybrush could, you know, occasionally he can be smooth. He could respond, it's okay because it brought me back to you. You know, something like that. You know, yeah, it could very easily have just ended like that. There were, I don't want to spoil, but there were other sequels around this time where, you know, the ending of a sequel would be very, very similar to the ending of the first or an earlier entry. But yeah, I think that does cover, yeah, just, I don't think I really have more left to say. Yeah, I already mentioned in, I think it was my video on the first Monkey Island game, you know, the in this one they really perfected the UI, and you know, it's wild to me that they didn't bring that back for the remaster, but then they did for the special edition of the second one, thankfully. Yeah, I don't know. New Coke situation, maybe. Oh, right. I meant to say this at the very start of the video. I'm not really back yet. Not that this entire video has been an illusion. Optical illusion. But it's just that this is, you know, in addition to me recording this, like, not very long before I get treatment. There's, what, an hour and a half before I get treatment, so I can push, past the physical pain a little bit without it, like, being way too painful and without it going untreated for so long that it, makes my condition worse. That's one part of it, but also the fact that this is a review from memory. So all I had to do here was just click record. I didn't have to play anything or even watch anything to, it's hard to say. It'll probably be at least one more week, maybe two, maybe more. I cannot say at this moment, but yeah. Really hoping to be back in time for Agatha All Along, at least. And yeah, it's definitely a work in progress.